Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. Tonight's episode is for all those baby turtles out there. Tonight's episode is titled When Life Moves Towards Life. When life moves towards light. Alright, guys, let's get the ball rolling. Pretty much there's an inspiration for movement, and this inspiration for movement is occurring in a world of sight. And in some sense, this world of sight is kept by light. That means the pillars of your sight is the various moments you have actually seen yourself. And so before a human being wonders about the sophistication and advancement of imagination or any sort of dimension, they must see first where they are. And then they must see how their inner realms feel about where they are. We see that it is light in our eyes, and it's this light that is the world, and we need the world to wonder about the other world. That means one can say light is the source of earth for the human being. Excuse me, guys. Pretty much, I just want to share this idea that our attention is holding on to form, the light is entering our eyes, it's reflecting out as a subject playfully. And so there's a subjective relationship with the world, and there's an objective relationship with the world. The objective relationship, the precondition to it is light. That means the whole relationship of the species on this planet is really a relationship between the light in the room being on, off, on, off, on, off. So many human beings wonder about the evolution of the psychology of the creature, not realizing that it's so obvious, it's so in front of us. That this, when you even look at the concept of the good and bad, isn't it the same, the light and the darkness? That our morality is the dance of sight. The march of the living unknown is pretty much this idea that our consciousness acknowledges that the percentage of the unknown is more than the percentage of the known. So whatever knowledge it projects, it will feel its simulation-like to the overall view it has. Now think about this idea, guys. Imagine you're standing in the shadow of a building, and you realize by a simple few steps, you find yourself in an angle where there's light. The sun's light is hitting you. Or even in a room or wherever, when the person increases the light of the room, there is more detail, more vision. Divine clarity in monotheistic traditions is shown as the light of the divine, light of God. And the lack of clarity is in some sense being pulled by the darkness. And in the darkness, the creature can't see what it is, but in the light it can. And I think the relationship of the concept of clarity that we seek is that it's all about how is the human being perceiving the self, and how is the human being perceiving the world. Because you may perceive yourself in one way, but you don't know how others are perceiving yourself. And how they are perceiving yourself is really dependent on their self, their sense of self. There came a moment in my life where I was sitting in the porch and I wondered about my most chaotic self, and I wondered about my greatest self, and I realized they both had something in common. That when I looked at my darkest self, it was too dark to see. I could not see how chaotic I could be. My mind could not see an edge to that image. And when I wondered about the ordered self, and I wondered about the most organized version, the most ordered version of my own existence, and I realized its light was blinding, like the light of a sun. So I realized that the edges of the spectrum, the human being really doesn't have access to. That means all fear is an uncertainty. All fear is an uncertainty. You don't see the edge of it. You don't see what's behind the wall, behind the room, behind the vision. And so the adventure of the human being. Sorry guys, I made myself laugh. The adventure of the human being in regards to even morality is to see more in the light. We can say the same way we want to see more from our world, the same way we actually want our eyes to perceive more. So if we took into consideration that there is the biological eyes, those two stargates on your face, so there's technically three stargates. The mouth is a different kind of stargate. It translates light into words. It's all the fragmentation of light, guys. When you go to look at the character, you have to blame the existential condition. That means on some level, every person in history that has been judged or valued, that value was a light beam in the dark. I mean, it's kind of obvious, like when we look at the universe, there's more pitch black abyss than there is more manifestation. So space exceeds matter. And if there is a chance that the human being's intelligence is intelligent through the space, then similarly we can say human intelligence exceeds matter. And I really don't know how much people care, but morality is this dance of light and darkness. And we are right now living in a civilization where we think the person is good. We think the person is bad. We're playing image subject. We're wearing subjects like a mask. That means right now human communication is, believe it or not, I mean, not in all cases, but I'm saying on a major level, I think for the future generations being raised, human communication is going to seem artificial. And it's really about which technology is introduced to the child's mind. My recommendation is technology, it's like you gotta introduce people to natural technologies first, then unnatural. And natural technology is, for example, how thoughts appear to you. Language is a technology, dear listener. It is not you. You're not a thought. You're an awareness where the thoughts come and go. Just like how I'm speaking right now, I'm not, it's different words than it was like a couple seconds ago. Similarly, the framework of the vision is different. Things change and attention moves. And it's as if there's two types of responsibility the human being can take. They can take a responsibility for the individual, objective, named, shaped self, or they can take responsibility for the unknown, unshaped, collective world. That means, guys, it's not just people who have a mind. This universal sector has a mind. And we are like its thoughts. I remember I was in a hotel in Genzano, Italy. And I remember it was kind of like it was like midday. I was smoking a cigarette outside of the hotel. And while I was there, I get a panic attack. But not a common panic attack, like a metaphysical panic attack. That means I suddenly saw something so deep I couldn't process, I couldn't even fathom further. That means sometimes in these talks when I pause, it's because I don't know how to fathom. I don't know how to give a shape to that emotion. Anyways, what was the source of the panic when I was in Italy in that moment? You know what it was? It was me pretty much wondering that if in some sense, like, how can I tell you? Like the cells in my body, if the cells, red blood cells in my veins, suddenly became conscious of some individualness, And in some sense, they started creating their own sciences and mathematics and technologies to try to understand why I'm going to work in the day. You know what I mean? Like it's in some sense this very, I don't know how to tell you, it was this vision like they would never fathom why I'm going to work. The cells in my body if they became conscious. So of course there is this idea of this multidimensionality where I say it's a horizontal multidimensionality where it's like endless stars to when you look at the edge of the sky. So there's an endless exploration in like a plane-like way. But then it's as if, what if the world is in a complexity of organic multidimensionality? This is why, so when you look at, for example, certain Eastern cultures, for example, I would say more Zen and Chinese traditional paths, it's not that they didn't have gods, they had deities, you know? But it was just that they did not see a separation from an organism, from a view that the world is also an organism. So when you realize you're part of a process, you relax. You kind of find that the playfulness of the sage. The playfulness of the sage is actually, it's not that things are playful. It's that there's an intensity that you have to sometimes acknowledge in a certain way. Think of it this way, that your mind is so advanced that subconsciously it is relating everything to everything all the time. This constant, every time we blink, every time we inhale, exhale, like on some level, it is true that when a person speaks, it's one person speaking. But it's on another level, one can say with every inhale, exhale, the system is getting reset. So it's like when one person speaks, it's like the shores, the water of the shores hit the beach, and whatever was written on the sand is getting wiped with every inhale and exhale. You see, it's not that people have forgetfulness. It's like it's just sensitivity to your inner realms, and it's how much when a person speaks, you see image. That means there might be some people that are listening to me, they're just paying attention to the words. But there might be some people who listen to me where it's not even the words they hear, it's just imagery. You know, for me personally, at some point in my life, that changed. That I realized there's inner film that I've been avoiding my whole life. There's this inner actor. And this inner actor was the primal archetype of my own principle universal philosophy that was keeping me alive. I'm telling you, the ego is an Iron Man suit. It's a technology. You know, when a person speaks, individual consciousness activates. But in silence, who are you? Let's say somebody asks you, who are you? And you don't answer. There's this pure silence. Who are you? What can that person assume? What can that person say? Silence is the veil between the inner realms and the outer realms. And I feel those who become comfortable with silence, their ears open up to the actual noise of the world. Inspiration is multi-local, guys. It's multi-dimensional and it can find you from anywhere. The guy who made the sound of the creature from the Alien Predator movies, from the Predator movie, that guy pretty much, when he kind of saw the alien, you know, and wondered, like they showed him a bunch of scenes or something of the alien, and they're like, it may help make the sound of this. The guy imagined, for example, a decaying, like crab or lobster thing in the beach, and how it was making a crackling sound in the sun. And so the guy, in some sense, mimicked that sound, and he came up with the sound of the predator creature, and it was like such a multi-leveled inspiration. And most people, unfortunately, nowadays, their past troubles them. There will come a time where your past will inspire you. You will run back to your past like it's an elder scroll, and you're trying to see, why did that happen? Why did this chess move? Why was I like this back then? And you're going to see the vast space of potential you had in every moment. Sogyal Rinpoche, I believe that was the name of the guy. He was this Tibetan sage, and he said, unless you conquer anger, your enemies will be inexhaustible. Your enemies will be inexhaustible. Just think about that. As long as you are resisting something in your inner realms, it doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter where you run to. When you have disturbed the world, lightning strikes pursue you. Not just, there's something about nature that it has to care for itself or it loses its meaning. Because what we fail to see now, the reason most people, not most people, but just we're kind of conditioned to care for our behavior more than what is actually happening. Like there was this magician in this YouTube video, the street magician, and he said he was in some sense walking and he said people are asleep. This magician was performing magic only to realize the world was under some strange spell. And it was the strange spell of becoming insensitive to the living being. It is not enough for a human being to just be good in their own eyes. And it's not just enough to be good in the outer realms. We are seeking the greatness of eons. We are wondering that it's as if you're looking at your life and you're seeing it as a bow and an arrow. You see, in some sense, the bow is your physical existence, the arrow is the existence of your mind. And as you, in some sense, hold this bow and arrow and you shoot you, in some sense, point towards the sky and shoot. Release the arrow. In the moment of where the arrow has been released, that is the dawn of the future. That is the vision of man. This is why philosophers were transcendental warriors throwing spears of their knowledge towards trying to break unknown skies with those spears. Do you know? That means the linguistic simulation, it has an Achilles heel. And that Achilles heel is the honesty of the simple presence. There is something real before whatever thought of unreal exists. And that's your presence. That means regardless of what you have believed, regardless of what you have done, you are present. And it's in an instant. So when we look at the word human being, the being part is in an instant. The human is the design and the change. Excuse me. By the way, anyone listening, if the additional noises bother you, I apologize. I'm trying to, build towards a studio one day. But anyways, this baby turtle is like, give me a break. The sun's in my eye. And then the turtle's like, no, the sun is the wakefulness. The sun is the energy. The sun is the inspiration. This creature experience an interaction with the cosmos. And this may be strange, but think about it, guys. before anything, before any evolution, what was something that was visiting Earth on and off? It was light. And if we think right now we are what we see, if we gotta see it to believe it, in some sense we are the relationship of light with the room. I think I should talk about this. There's some things I've been holding back simply because I felt like sometimes when you share something too soon, people subconsciously only hear it. And the subconscious is its own filter, so in some sense. You see, guys, I got this fascinating revelation. I realized that branches, or in some sense, new dimensions branch out of each other. That means right now as I'm speaking, you who are a human being somewhere in the world, just look at your moment. Just look at how you're in a moment of being right now and give it a value, any value. If you think your life is good, just give it a value. Give it some sort of value out of 10, let's say. And I want you to see that's one value. And just like how you can hold an object and turn the object, move the object around, or move around the object and get so many different viewpoints on it, similarly, we can get endless viewpoints from subjects because subjects spiral. They're also, there's an unconditional flexibility to them. That means if I tell you, imagine like a blue cube rotating slowly, a blue glowing cube rotating slowly, like, I don't know, a meter above your head or something, or in front of you, you would see, you can visualize that, right? But if you can't pick up the cube you visualize. So you see, the inner realms are simultaneous with the objective realms, but they can't influence the objective realms. They're like a terrace, they're like a balcony, you just see. You're not down there. So the mind is kind of like the seer of thought. And so the body is in some sense the embodiment of the thought. So in some sense we have a reception kind of signal, giving a signal kind of relationship with our own intelligence. It's all about expression, but expressing each other at a certain resonance. expressing the self at a certain resonance. There are those who think there is, like Nikola Tesla really dived into this. This dude pretty much saw everything as frequency. And you know what that means? That means he saw that the way he got his invention was that before he invented his invention, the AC motor, it was existing in a parallel vision. It was existing in his mind. The content of your mind is, you can say, the gift of the other dimensions to you. So after some point, it doesn't become about character building. I was like, what is this? Is all of life character building? Don't do this, don't, do that. Go here, don't go here. I was like, what is this? After some point, you see the show and you just move on. It's like sometimes before the show moves on, you move on. They say the show goes on. No, you go and then the show comes. We endure. We experience many modes of life. We're not just one person in this life. We are a process of the evolution of the personality. We are a process. This is the evaporation of fear, the eradication of it, where it was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did human beings become peaceful because they got rid of fear? And we were like, yeah. And then they, let's say the future generations were like, how? How did human beings get rid of fear? And we said, in some sense, they looked at it. They looked at it and they realized, what is there to fear in a changing world? It's pretty much all that human life has been doing is effort, no effort. That's it. What you care about, what is important for you, literally the importance is the creation of the energy, is the storehouse. And this world has a cruel dimension, guys. That means as much as there are human beings that are loved and held tightly, there are human beings that are in some sense walking desolate wastelands. There are dimensions of anguish. The human being, this plane of existence, this visible world of ours, is like a garden of various systems where life is defined by the characters in those systems. You can say all of human knowledge has been a strange self-obsession as a reaction to the emptiness that's everywhere. That means, why did human beings create knowledge? And we were like, yeah, because they got bored. It's like, why did we all suddenly evolve? Like this, let's say this is the, simple man's one simple man's kind of view on evolution. Why did we evolve? Because we wanted to. Like that's the only explanation. I'm just fascinated. I feel we are pilots. We're oscillating between two dimensions. That means our livelihood is occurring between two states. A state where we are matter and a state where we are the space of matter. And when you feel like you're the space of matter, you're pretty much feeling like a mind that is being the whole moment. When you feel you're the matter, that's when you're like, let's say, climbing the mountain. Literally, your body is your mind in that moment. A dancer, literally, we can say they are expressing their mind through their body. A writer is expressing their mind through ink. A speaker is expressing their mind through sound. And when it goes to certain academic fields, let me tell you, you in anything that a person wants to carry in this life, you need to have strength. And many people don't realize this, but your endurance as a creature is information most immediately for you. That means when someone falls from a bicycle, it's not like a person in Japan, let's say if somebody falls in America, a person in Japan suddenly goes, my knee hurt. The information of that experience is most immediately accessible to the user. So I started after some point in life wondering about what is using my mind. If my mind is also where my identity and self-image is born. And then I kind of was in the unknown and I had this preferencelessness, as if like the honest fools that gets lost somehow like assistance arises in weird ways. So I often say this, most people think in regards to ability and skill that they have to try something and it happens. Sometimes your failure at the beginning is your introduction to that world. That means some systems, if you don't fail, you can't succeed in because you don't have a sense of how far the spectrum goes. This is the difference between ancient mindsets seeing that there was a soul. Like, do you know how fascinating it was in ancient times? Here, guys, I was just thinking that here's a good way to explain. We can say right now the sense of self, the identity of the person, the image of self. Your subjective self is made of sound and light. Your objective self is made from light and matter. And in some sense, matter is sound. Not here, but I feel that in some sense it is a movement, because right now the body is in a sort of circulation, the heart is beating. That means life is never a static image. It's something that's vibrating, moving. Something is happening. There's some movement. Some activity requires to happen. That means right now it's like we're not like a wall, like the heart is beating. I could remain still and silent and my organs are still functioning. So you see, the biological body is a moving system. So in some sense there can even be this very deep philosophical argument about human psychology, that it's all the reflection of the human body, but not its cells, its behaviors. We can totally find the mind of man, ever since the era of language worship begun, has been occupied with stories, and the stories it chooses are characters that overcome the circumstances, not realizing that the illusion was entered in. So you see, when you're sitting on a chair, nobody can lift you up. You have to want to get up from this chair. And this chair could be a perception upon the lifetime that is perhaps inhibiting what is to come. Lao Tzu says that you must let go of who you are now to become who you are meant to be. That means any person wondering about the future, you will have different eyes. These eyes that wonder about the future are not going to be the eyes that see the future. Do you see? That means eyes are in some sense through language, sharing history as a sort of Morse code. That means when Ludwig Wittgenstein, this philosopher, said the limits of my language are the limits of my world, all those people who wrote, guys, they saw the internet coming. They knew that there was a value in keeping the world alive to the living. And we must have advanced initiatives begin in knowledge. And really, this is the situation. There is a problem, you go to the problem, and you don't have an answer to the problem. Either you do, you have an answer and you attempt it and you solve the problem. Or you don't. Let's say a situation where you don't have an answer to the problem. What you do is you test. You, in some sense, check for the relationship of that problem. That means it's like you look at the problem and you wonder about the problem, and you're like, how much of the problem is from the world? How much of the problem is from how I'm looking at the world? You study the relationship of the self and the world, because that's really what consciousness is, isn't it? When I look at this picture, it's kind of like human beings were given air to be and light to see. That means we're existing through conditions. We have an unconditional subjective existence to ourselves through certain conditions. Like this turtle if it becomes conscious, it may become scary. Like if this turtle suddenly had an awareness of its circumstance like the human being, it could freak out. But if it doesn't, if it has a lesser view, then it can't even measure the circumstance. So it's as if saying that human beings, there can be endless views on whether we're doing the right thing or wrong thing. That means the morality is just dependent on who's looking. This doesn't mean morality is doesn't have a connection to human nature. Human nature, it's like what disturbs you know. Let me tell you, it's like everyone has a sort of limit where suddenly something disturbs them. You know, it's like pretty much an animal psychology. When the animal is cornered, it's freak out. It freaks out. You know, there's this story I'll tell you. It was told to me in my youth. And I think it was my mother. My mother told me the story, and the story was about, believe it or not, stupid friends. That was the moral of the story, and I'm going to share with you the story. And there's this old man who is just going on for a hunt, and he suddenly sees this bear, like in a trap. You know what I mean? In some sort of trap. And he sets the bear free, and the bear is like, oh my god, I'm going to be your best friend, I'm going to protect you, you just saved my life. The bear is just super happy. Now what happens is the old man is alone, and the old man invites the bear, and they become friends, like close friends, like, best friends. And what happens is that one day the old man is sleeping, and there's a fly on his head. And the bear really cares for this old man who saved him. The bear sees there's a fly on the head of the old man, and he's like, I'm not gonna let an insect touch my friend. And he grabs a giant rock to kill the insect, and he kills the old man. And the moral of the story was that sometimes you have to make up for even the blind spots of your environment. I think human beings that care for the world, they have realized the value of the inner realms as a collective external vision. That means pretty much, like, look at what people are doing on this earth. They're either trying to work in it, they're trying to either get out of it, which is like somehow go to some other dimension or some enlightenment or some sort of freedom beyond it, or they in some sense feel the world is nothing and they're not doing anything. After some point, you realize these are just elevations, modes of experience. It's a journey. It's like the human being suddenly being like, oh my god, is the whole cosmos happening as I'm existing? You know? The poet Rumi, from 700 years ago, the Sufi mystic poet from Persia, he would say, I died as a mineral, and I became a plant. I died as a plant, and I rose to animal. I died as an animal, and I was man. I shall die once more. Or, sorry, he says, why should I fear death? When was I less by dying? I shall die once more to soar with angels blessed. But even from angelhood I must pass on to that which no mind has ever conceived. Now, the poet Rumi was saying this in regards to the evolution, the ultimate evolution of the soul towards the inconceivable. For Mr. Within, I'm seeing human behavior and I'm wondering if it reduces, it goes to the inevitable void, the emptiness is inconceivable to an existential being. And then you begin to see it goes either towards infinite fullness, and that is also inconceivable for an empty being. You know what I mean? That means emptiness and fullness, we think they are both in one dimension. They're two simultaneous dimensions in one moment. That means there's like a self that's chaotic and there's a self that's ordered. Instead of you being this, these are ways your attention can move in this world. If you're a savage person, that means you want life to happen with uncontrollable intensity. You'll probably get pushed into the unconscious. There's a sort of etiquette of the inner realms that you don't impose. That means this is when I can say a person is ready for piloting their inner realms, when they can go and be in nature for a while and creatures in nature are comfortable around them. Because I'm telling you guys, something even animals, which they're not used to, is sincere human attention. It's like a weird feeling for them. Do you know, any being, so especially for human beings, we're so in our inner realms, the moment we notice, as if like, I feel like it's like on some level, the world is like in this battlefield. And anytime we can come into that space where we are identifying with not just the content of the view, but the viewer, we feel free. That means, what is freedom? It is space to exist. It's kind of fascinating, isn't it? Imagination is solar powered. We need reality to wonder about its deviation and then to call that deviation imagination. That means reality is imagination that's given. That means if we don't know what the source of reality is, life will always appear. Like, here's the thing, as long as there's time, reality can feel like a simulation. Time is like one of the last staircases, or one of the staircases to heaven. But what is this heaven? This heaven is the evolution of an individual field of particles into the realization they are a mind. We're becoming a collective mind. That means literally it's the only way left to go. That means, do you know how much, I was just thinking about it, it was kind of blowing my mind. I was thinking, like, of course I speak about cyberspace culture, and there's an unfathomable complexity with what may occur with that. So imagine generations of children getting lost in cyberspace virtual reality simulations and not knowing they're even in it. So the cyberspace culture is, in some sense, the alteration of sensory perception through at least a conscious program. That means a person can turn on the air conditioning and then sleep, and that system will be running the whole night. And then whatever happens, the person suddenly realizes it was their choice, it was their conscious will that set something into motion and then went into an unconscious state, and then there was an aftermath. And I think it's true. If you don't attempt the new, that means you on some level feel you don't deserve it. Anything that doesn't happen for a person, trust me, there's a sort of subconscious resistance to it. That means, let's say you're someone who's been chasing something your whole life. Now, you've been chasing it for such a while, so your experience of chasing that thing is it takes a long time to get it. Now, check this out. You begin to see some people are not chasing it and they instantly get it. When life is realized to be a viewpoint, a view, it's a view. Life is a view, guys. Are you taking in this view? It's. I think it's a fair question to ask. We have minds, but we don't know what they are. So what are we really? What are we other than attention identifying with form? It's the reentrance of the unknown into the educational system. It's where a greater calling comes. That means more than children need to learn the past, they need to bring the future. The future is like a spectrum of unknown potential design, and if you as a human being choose to, you can pull out one of these designs. I wrote this book called The Inventor's Sphere, and I was saying that the reason human beings comprehend design is in some sense because we are made of it. And this is at least the sort of, if people ask me about any sort of extrasensory perception, I will tell you it's geometric for me. Geometry is, we are geometry. That means on some level, like potentially extraterrestrials could be looking at human beings and being like, look at these shapes. That means, I think, when it comes to even the concept of universal parenting, the parent just inspire your child to be an explorer of the world. That's it. When there's an excitement to the stretching of the experiential vision of the being. So what it is it's as if like everybody who's alive is living in a giant alphabet, and we are like each like a unique letter of this alphabet, this endless alphabet, you know. And so it's kind of like, just like now these letters in the alphabet, they can become words, you know, and then words harbor worlds. So in some sense, I'm kind of thinking like, really, guys, I often think about it when I especially walk downtown. I live in Toronto. When I walk downtown, you know what it is like? It's like I ask myself, for how many generations is it gonna just be rectangles? Is it gonna be like squares and rectangles? Like, you know what I mean? It's like there's something missing from modern civilization, and it's the beauty part. It looks ugly. And it looks ugly because the people value their inner realms more than the outer realm. This is why we're insensitive, and I never finished that story of that magician. In some sense, there's this, the magician on that video I saw was pretty much saying like, okay, this magician, he saw this old lady slip on this ice and her head hit the ground and bleed, and nobody was looking around. This was in some like busy city in America. And it was like nobody was seeing. Nobody was in some, and I think it's universal, guys, because so many cultures it's like this, where the people are blind to each other's value because they're so obsessed on their own value. I think it was Jordan Peterson in one of his lectures. I remember him shouting like, "Your rights are my rights. My rights are your rights." I mean, really, what can we do with our mind? Like, what do you do with the mind? You know, it's like somebody went up to the yogi. You know, it's like, "Hey, Mr. Yogi, Mr. Enlightened One, you know, what can you do with the mind? Realistically, what can you do? You know?" And guys, 3 directions. Or you can say 4. Nothing. That's one direction. It's a direction. Singular, all phenomena in life could have one meaning. Dualistic, it's a process, endless yin-yang cycle. That means the good and the bad are endlessly fighting like 2 spiraling dragons, one white, one black. Imagine you were a villager back in the day going to go get water from a well at night, and then you saw, like in the moonlight, like a white and black dragon kind of like spiraling into the air. And beyond dualities is the infinite. The infinite means the relationship of space with matter has no end to measurement. The relationship of matter to matter in space has measurement, but the relationship that space has to matter, it is endless. So after some point, it's like, you can say the scientist was like, what value do we give to empty space? What value? And you see, you either, it's the borderline of infinity and the void. And that's found in all character psychology. That means any sense of self that's temporary has to acknowledge a peak of its evolution, and also has to acknowledge that the peak of that evolution is the enhancement. That means if every living moment you live on in this life, with every breath that you live on in this life, it's like you're climbing a mountain, you know? And it's like, you don't know if you're going to get to the top, but you're climbing. Every day you wake up, it's like another climb, right? So you're climbing this mountain, and then after some point of this mountain, it's no longer climbing with hands. It doesn't mean the climb is over. It doesn't mean the presence of the being is in some sense done. You see, the environment was our voice for a very long time. It is fairly recent that our voice has become our environment. It's very recent. That means if you look at evolutionary wise, we're much more evolved to be silent beings than creatures that speak. You know that it was like that Transformers theme, like Transformers, robots in disguise. It's like human beings, you know? Or like Transformers, you know, human beings in disguise of language. So, guys, welcome to the chat, everyone. Brianna and Omalka and Hummus. Omalka says, do you see any relation between the Taoism and karma? Between Taoism and karma, like every action has a reaction kind of scenario. I see Taoism as the witness, the simultaneous witness of the reaction of the cause and effect. That means when you become aware of cause and effect, isn't it strange? It's as if you're aware of both simultaneously. Do you know? So how can you even consider one side without being aware of both simultaneously? So you see, it's the witness. Taoism, Omalka, and Taoism, Lao Tzu from China says that, Lao Tzu says, what did he say? Oh yeah, he says the Tao that can be spoken about is not the real Tao. The Tao that can be spoken about is not the real Tao. That means language cannot reveal an experiential witnessing moment. That means the truth of it, that means language is the tip of the iceberg. Me right now speaking to you, not only the words I'm saying are just fragments of my inner realms I'm sharing, but at the same time, it's like it is so superior to language that we probably need 5 more evolutions in language to occur to truly be able to at least somehow relay. Because the whole thing of history was that we were keeping vision alive, and how we have kept vision alive is through various layers and various systems. So you see, that means as if a part of your mind is seeing everything happen in separate moments, in separate ways, and at the same time a part of your mind is like seeing you happen all at once. Do you see what I mean? This is why there's this endless oscillation of, I'm like, what is this? Is people's metaphysics all around history just like everything becoming singular, or things becoming multidimensional, things becoming singular? I'm like, is this like, are we oscillating between these dimensions and thinking we are these things? Yeah. That means, imagine you change the channel of like those old school radios, and suddenly you hear one kind of music, and then you hear another kind of music, and then you're like, are you each channel? No, you're the witness of all the channels. You're the one moving them. So when man realizes he is the mover of his inner realms, that's where you become responsible to become also aware of your awareness, you know? So welcome Marvin to the chat section. Marvin says, what you thought to be the thinker is just a thought. But guys, I'll ask you a next level question. If you think you're a thought, how can a thought think? How can the thinker be a thought, in other words? Do you see? It reaches its own paradox. The system reveals its voidness. You're not language. You're a creature of attention before you're a creature of words. That means before you are the image, you are the awareness of the changing of all the images so far as they've happened. So I would say, guys, cause and effect is a view of what's happening in the moment. And we can say another view is that they're both occurring in the moment. One deep view, which is pretty much the mystical notion, is that the cause never went anywhere. That's why they said you were free before you needed to be. But you just didn't realize you needed to be. You were free. So that means it's like a freedom for a creature that is identifying with space, and a freedom for a creature that is identifying with what's in this space are totally different identifications. So you see, guys, I mean, there's many schools of thought, and you see, it's like philosophy is not like economics, guys. Let me tell you, it's not like businesses are trying to destroy each other. Philosophy, words have a sort of eternal glow to them. Do you know? And so philosophy, or let me say it, language, if you see it as a technology, it will fascinate you. If you see it as you, it will horrify you. Anything that the person is not content with, they really can't work with, right? If the surgeon can't stand the sight of blood, they can't conduct surgery. You see, it's like there has to be a level of confrontation, and I think every person's DNA is set to find itself in a certain intensity of life and have a certain level of reaction to it. That means, in some strange way, if we were ahead of our time as a species in 2020, wondering about what a collective mind would look like, we could at least imagine every individual human being and their atmosphere of mind, or their mind sphere's presence on the world. It's as if it is a thought of humanity. That means if you thought for a second, like many people have seen, like, let me tell you, people have worshipped pretty much everything in the cosmos. They've worshipped nothingness, they've worshipped everything, they've worshipped objects, they've worshipped subjects, they've worshipped images, inner images, they've worshipped supernatural events. People have worshipped everything. Pretty much what that means is people are like moths, and their attention is going to the light that is real to them, the light of reality. So in some sense, what's moving you, is inspiring your movement, is not just atoms in empty space. It is also the sophisticated relationships that's built on there. That means it's like, there is an oddness to the human design, guys. I mean, we can't ignore this. Look at every other species on this earth. Like, what are they? Like, are they slow, or are we too fast in evolution? Like, what's up with that? And I'm telling you, we are an infusion of the sky and the earth. After some point, guys, life doesn't have that kind of a linear meaning because your mind opens up to the non-linear. That means the general on the battlefield looks at all the soldiers, looks at himself, looks at everything, looks at the kingdom, looks at humanity. And back in the day, war was extinction. And so in some sense, extinction of the culture, of the civilization, of the kingdoms that were at war. And so this extinction in some sense meant that the ancient castles would witness many kings. And so that general on that battlefield would suddenly realize that there is a cost to life. And the cost of it is the decision and the direction and how much it has gone forth. And so after some point you realize all that's really left to do in the moment is that you can just do the best. You can just do the best of your ability and then watch. That's the relationship. It's just when in some sense the spotlight of the world is directed, you advance. When you see advancement, advance instantly. And I'm one of those guys. I mean, I have more of a inclination towards futurist ideals, but I'm saying, like, just like how fascinating it is to experience the newest technology, it is their same fascination exists with experiencing a totally different recalibration of an inner realm. That means, check it out, guys. There was this anime show called Psychopaths. Japanese storytelling is next level, guys. I have a great respect for Japanese culture and storytelling. Like, so, anyways, it's this sci-fi narrative is showing this detective in the future where there's this AI system that is giving a numerical value to every human being's morality. And if their morality goes down a certain value, the police at the time have to, in some sense, destroy. And this girl is a new detective in the system, in the whole thing. And she wakes up in the morning and everything's so futuristic. And there's this hologram of like some sort of jellyfish or something. And the hologram asks the girl, what kind of style of room do you want? And she says Victorian, and her room is these simple blue walls. And then suddenly the room suddenly becomes like a hologram projection is sent, as if the girl as she's in the morning getting ready, everything is like a hologram. She's literally like her room had turned into a holographic Victorian castle, like the room of a princess or something, And so I was thinking, yeah, like that sudden infusion of Victorian architecture through a hologram upon the room. That means, imagine all these people were just living inside simple colored walls rooms. You have a sort of projector in the future where you put this in your room, and it just projects like a Victorian style room. And anyways, I was thinking the same way that in that show it was showing that technology projecting a holographic kind of architecture. I was kind of seeing like in I could close my eyes and visualize the room I'm in completely looking Victorian, with Victorian architecture. But the thing is, it's not like it doesn't occur externally. So this phenomena of the inner realms of imagining, like in my inner realms, I could do the same thing that AI in that Japanese show could do in regards to projecting the hologram. So it's like our belief system they are holographic projections of the soul through language into a fragmented self-awareness of itself. And that self is the inconceivable, really. I mean, where is the spectrum? It's going from zero to infinity. It's like people you see, they either have no motivation or they have infinite motivation. They ask the guy, if you were an eternal being, would you still work hard? And the guy's like, yeah, hard work forever. You see, no. Before hard work, your mind has to work hard. And that means your vision. Your vision is key. The vision is the key to all doors. Your attention is where the secrets of the universe are really unraveling for you, isn't it? When life moved towards light, it was a relationship with space. Guys, I'm saying simply that whatever way our inner realms move, our imagination is like a private room And what that means is if you imagine something the other person can't see, what person B, or how person A perceives the world and how person B perceives the world, there are two different worlds, even though they're in the same world. So that means the minds are designed to endlessly differentiate from one another. So in some sense, after some point, it no longer becomes the comparison of shape to shape. It becomes the awareness of shape through experiential space. That means if somebody asks you, who are you? You can see, you can give an answer based on any memory of yourself. You can remember who you were as a kid and say that, and you'd see you'd still be correct. That was you. That's still you. You have the memory. And so you see, after some point, it's like this sage said, if you strip away the names and the personalities and the stories and the characters, what are you left with? You're left with phenomena occurring. So do you see? Do you see that we are not just coloring physically the world, like imagine you're a painter. We are also coloring our inner realms. And I'm telling you, your inner realms don't have a color. The hand that's coloring it, it doesn't have a color. What that means is even Marcus Aurelius gave us a clue. He said the soul is dyed with the color of its thoughts, and Marcus Aurelius was a Stoic. So behavior was the path to the truth. And behavior meant me being aware of what's here now. And so that means I want people to go ask all these people in the New Age community, like Eckhart Tolle and whatnot, go ask them, what is the now? Like, what shape does it have? What does it look like? How do we define it? How do we contain it? And you'll see it's just presence of awareness. Your presence, energetic presence before you do anything, is a reality. So this is why we always feel eternal to our own thoughts. That means, like, if I ask you right now, are you a subject? And what would you say? This is a good question, guys. Whoever is listening right now, just attempt to answer this in the chat section. So, anyone listening, just out of curiosity, I wanted to know how many people feel they're a subject. Like, if somebody asked you right now, are you a subject? The word subject. How many people would say yes? How many people would say no, out of curiosity? So guys, thank you for responding. Anyone who's listening can also respond as the talk goes on. So I'm responding to the chat section. Yes, Brianna, I agree. But here's the thing. In some sense, not always. I mean, in deep sleep, there's no subject. So exactly, that no-shapeness is how in the Upanishads, in yoga, they would say the seer of the seen is unseen. And when I say seen, S-E-E-N. So the one who is aware that they are aware is not, doesn't have a shape. It's attributeless. It's like a glass orb, and all the colored surfaces it goes on is its identification. That's the presence. That's the unknown, which was another word for it would be soul. Do you see what I mean? It is the viewer. It's like who thought all ancient mysticism was about the one looking at a screen. And guys, if you're not a subject, then what are you? This would be a good question for those who say no. Let me just type it. I'm saying, guys, imagine your consciousness is a spectrum. You know, like I think when I say spectrum, people know what I mean. Like, for example, imagine the back of that Pink Floyd album cover. The one light beam goes into the prism and it comes out as the color spectrum. And when it comes out as the color spectrum, what is that? That is showing the max of it. You can say the light spectrum is kind of like how much light there is in the room. The consciousness spectrum is how much consciousness there is to the room. The mastery spectrum is how much awareness of the value there is in the room. You see, after some point, it's like there's space of pure being, and there's space where everything that's being can literally be, it's like we're projecting thought. We're projecting it. And that's my mystery. That's the question that baffled me. That how is it that all these years, my cells of my body have been changing. My thoughts in accordance with my experiences have been changing, but how is it that I still feel like the same me? That shocked me. In a world where everything was changing, how was I treating myself as one person? In a world where in various environments were constantly realigning my experience. You know, the concept of the subject, guys, is literally another word for form in the inner realms. The subject was like, if you were asking Hegel what a subject is, he would tell you it's an internal object. And we'd be like, calm down, Hegel. Oh, man. And guys, I'm telling you, just think about it this way, and this is the best way where a person can any person who's just in a moment, just think about this. Think about the time where we were in hunter-gatherer societies and the only entertainment was exploration. What does that mean? That means some people are waiting for the world to come to them, and some people are running to the world. They're marching into the living unknown. Because, guys, there's a joy to, like right now, let me tell you what's going on in the species, I think. I keep going back to this because it's like when I give the talk, I'm on a branch, and then as I'm giving the talk, it's as if I'm flying into the sky. See, like the whole forest. I'm like, it's unavoidable after a certain point in a microcosmic inquiry to not suddenly reach to the macrocosmic context. Mastery is in some sense a creative effort on some level. That means I remember I would see these martial art movies and I was like so overwhelmed as a kid. Like when I saw what was it called? Hidden Dragon, Crouching Tiger, that movie. At some point the dude is poisoned, and like I was like, this is the most strong-willed person I've ever seen. And the dude is poisoned and he's like, I'm fighting the poison against with my circulation. Do you know what I mean? The dude was like, he was literally moving his blood of his body different against the direction so the thing doesn't go to his heart. And on some level, that you're like, this dude has mastery over the blood cells in his veins, Like that's some next level mastery, guys. But if there was one thing, and they asked Mr. Within, what should you master? I would say master time. Because it's the thing that's moving. It's the arrow of your life. Observe it, study it as well, as long as you can. It's like that's really what you can do. And you have to build your own tools. This is a concept so foreign that we think extraterrestrial contact is just one-sided. We're just sitting like in a lighthouse and the extraterrestrial contact occurs. It's like, oh, a boat came. No, it's not like that, guys. It's first human beings have to tap into a recognition of this global law where all civilizations eventually they come to this kinda, I would tell you, the global law of the central sun. And this global law, sorry, not global, universal law, which our planet will eventually reach its threshold, reach its stage, is a point where you are unauthorized to see beyond your species if you cannot see your mind as the space where all phenomena is founded. It's like an inner advancement. It's like after some point we can build the most advanced external technologies, but if the inner realms don't advance and evolve, then in some sense there's no point. That means there's no point in the technology evolving. It's like there's no point in building an advanced roller coaster ride where there's no one sitting in the roller coaster seat. There's no point creating a wonderland when there's nobody there. So that's the thing. Light is kind of like the effort of becoming conscious of the spirit of the momentum of life. Right now, if you asked, somebody asked me, like, are you a subject or you're an object? I would be like, let me see. I look at myself, yeah, in the conscious waking state, I'm an object. Like, that's unavoidable. Like, there's an object that my attention is being preserved through. A biological program, I call it. You know? the object, I see it. It's here. The subject, when I look at it, it's there. When I don't look at it, I am my objective experience. That means, guys, this might, I guess this is something I'll share about me. When I don't give these talks, I'm not a thought to myself. It's been a while where the reason life happens, but it's like, for how long can you react to its inner events? That means there's this quote from Epictetus. He says we suffer from not we suffer not from the events, in our lives. We suffer from the judgments we have about them. Epictetus, the Stoic-minded person, says this. You know what that means? That means life is translating into a film, and you're actually reacting to the film as a creature, but that film is your creation. That means you are translating phenomena. That is like the advanced communicator. You're realizing you're also part of an advanced communication of the universal sector. This universal sector has a voice. But its voice is not only in sound. That means, like, to an advanced eye, you can say light can be a symphony as beautiful as music. But our tolerance to, like, if you think about it, guys, isn't it fascinating? Like, in the biological design, your mouth can close and open, but your ears can't. Do you know what I mean? As if the ears hear everything all the time. But in regards to communication and the mouth communicates at certain times. I think that's something unique to consider. So guys, I gotta say, language games are endless. Even though I speak, my attention is more towards direct experience, which eventually you'll see the archetype is the intermediary. That means there is this idea that the master-servant dynamic was savage on both sides. That means the master was locked to the karma of the servant. The karma of the servant was locked to the karma of the master. You know what that means? That means it's kind of like punching. You punch a wall, you will feel pain. You disturb human life, you will feel pain. But that pain is not on your hand, it's on your mind. The world can have many stories, guys. The world can have endless stories. The attention is what is the most important value. And here's the thing, I think I never got to making the point, maybe I did. When you don't have the solution, you got to build the probabilities. You got to test the waters. Test the waters of your mind. You test the waters of your mind by trusting either moments in life and going with a certain excitement. That means, here's the thing, like it's some people in modern society, I'm going to say it because it's happening on a massive level. Some people, they are drawn towards the alteration of their experience. That means they're trying to find a way towards novelty chemically. Some people are trying to find a way towards novelty behaviorally, that person going on an adventure. You know, you can say some people are in some sense looking for it in a mystical context. And so what it is ultimately it's just a collective system of human activity. And all this human activity is happening in bubbles. And these bubbles are not connecting. And the reason is because for now, it's more important who we are to ourselves than what our world is to all of us. When that shift occurs, that's one of the great transformations. You know, it's going from how the world moves in your eyes and how your eyes move the world. And that's what needs to be studied. That's the hunter-gatherers of the inner realms, where we realize we're not just human beings dressed in sounds, in ideas, in words. We are the process of humanity's effort to see what it could have been while it's here. That's it. Aim for, run towards an advanced civilization. There is no greater game to play. Run towards the potential of your advanced civilization. Every era in history is like a soldier of history enlisted to advance the civilization. You see, it's kind of like this. There has to be a fearlessness towards novelty. There has to be this vision that freedom is more crucial than anything else. But this freedom is not a conditional freedom, because conditional freedom instantly turns into tyranny. Unconditional freedom means the freedom is no longer image based. So a freedom beyond image is a freedom of all freedoms, is it not? All images of freedom. So, interesting question. Ultimate creations, I'm going to share your question. You say, what do people mean when they say we live in a matrix or made up world? How can you have made up souls or life when we have a great creator? Now, let's say, just to bring this more down to earth, let's say that great creator is nature. That means, even in a religious context, one can say what happens in nature is the will of God. That's how they perceive, how one perceives through the religious lens, you know. Now, for a more secular-minded audience, it would be saying how nature moves. So you can give a personality, you can give a hidden personality, hidden motive behind nature, or we can just see it as movement's nature, nature's movement. So let's say if the system is being moved, then you technically don't exist. The system exists. So on some level, when Swami Krishnananda said religion is God remembering himself, he meant in some sense that if there is a prime mover beyond your individual free will, then your individual free will is at most a conscious instrument. So in some sense, there is no simulation, there is no matrix, because it's all the movement of one truth. So in that sense, yes, in a worldview where everything is occurring, you're in a singular dimension, in the one dimension, if you see things in a one dimension, the dualistic, the void, and the infinite don't need to have meaning for you. They ask you, what is the meaning of life? You're like, it's everything. You know, it's singular. It's one, it's oneness. And they're like, you know, why? And you're like, because of oneness, you know, and you realize oneness really can't question itself. So technically, it's not in the jurisdiction of the free will to assume the totality of the motive of nature through personality. It's not our place, you know, on some level to kind of animate macrocosmic behavior. But this idea that we're living in a matrix, is kind of valid. I would say ultimate creations in the chat section in accordance to your question. It's valid because if I ask you right now, all our thoughts and names, where is your name? You see, it's a linguistic simulation. That means life is a simulation in the same way that person saw a sunset and it was beautiful. That beauty was a simulation. It was a relationship. It was literally like two chemicals reacting with one another and being transformed. So I am saying on some level, you realize, wait a minute, is my mind being the light in the room? And that's where you discover the unknown. And you see, there's a sort of, you can say, viewpoint that why choose to see something complex when it's so simple? And you will see, because that simplicity has nowhere else to go to but complexity. That means that they're like, why do you have a complex vision? Because I was a simple man, you know? And then they tell the person, why do you have a simple vision? He's like, because I lived through so much complexity. You see, the archetypes can move around. But the notion is that life is multidimensional. In the religious context, the multidimensional is a simulation of the Creator's will. In a secular perspective, the multidimensionality is the emergence from the void. So I hope that was okay answer to your question, UC. Here, I'll read something for you. Because there is a mathematical definition of a matrix too, you know. The people who wrote Matrix, I believe, were quantum physicists. And of course, by the way, guys, I'm just one guy in a universe that is so big. Like I'm just sharing how far I see from it, So that's, as Aristotle says, it's the sign of an educated mind to entertain an idea without accepting it. So what that means is we don't even have to, that quote I just said from Aristotle, you don't have to even accept that. You can just entertain. Here, Matrix. This is what if the dictionary was an old sage with its page count being all the years of its wisdom. The matrix is a noun, an environment or material in which something develops, a surrounding medium or structure. An example of that is free choices become the matrix of human life. Wow, that's a good example, guys. Free choices become the matrix of human life, an environment or material in which something develops. So you can say that the life of a system is a sort of matrix. Another definition of it is a mass of fine-grained rock in which gems, crystals, or fossils are embedded. Yeah, it has a sort of mineral definition, you know. In biology, the substance between cells or in which structures are embedded. The substance between cells or in which structures are embedded. Okay, yeah, the bridges between. There's a matrix kind of. So what that means is it's kind of seeing like a vast city of all bridges from everywhere, like, but on a cellular level. It says fine material. The matrix of gravel paths is raked regularly. The second definition, those were I guess, denominations of the first. The second one is a mold in which something such as printing type or a phonograph record is cast or shaped. Okay, there we go. Third definition is mathematical. And I think it's too solid. Let's see if we can animate. A rectangular array of quantities or expressions in rows and columns that is treated as a single entity and manipulated according to particular rules. An organizational structure in which two or more lines of command, responsibility, or communication may run through the same individual. There you go. That's the definition I was looking for, guys. So the dictionary, it's telling us the matrix is an organizational structure in which two or more lines of command, that means two or more motives of the whole world, or it says responsibility or communication may run through the same individual. That means the experience of two dimensions at once. So in some sense, language gives us that experience. So that's why I say the linguistic simulation. Another nice question, incredible question actually, ultimate creations. Do you think we have a parallel world or worlds, or a Mandela effect exists? The inner realms are multidimensional. So if you close your eyes and you ask yourself that question, yes. If you open your eyes and feel what you see is the truth before you are, then in some sense the answer would be, if you are deciding to identify with only what's in this dimension, how could you ever be another dimension? How could there ever be in your experience other dimensions if you think you are in this dimension? Do you see? So the overall vision of it has to change, I guess. I guess, guys, on some level, it's just the accuracy of the inner realms in comparison to the outer realms, really. I feel your attention is present attributelessly, therefore, it's like asking, uh, it's kind of saying, like, is space multidimensional? And the answer can, how can I tell you? It's like the eyes in the room of the moment, they are literally the soul of the moment. So it's so instantaneous, the presence of being, that you can't even give it a concept. That means we can only give something, talk about it if it's dualistic. Beyond dualism, it really moves beyond the experience of a personality. That means if the eyes of this turtle and the wallpaper were closed, it would not see a duality, it would just be in darkness, it would be in a singular view. But the fact that the eyes have opened to light, that the fact that light enters our eyes, it's such a natural relationship, it's such a unique relationship of nature, that there's a giant sphere shining light upon a smaller sphere that's orbiting around it. Like, this is so surreal, guys, that in some sense, there's an endless fascination to advance. The seeds of an interstellar civilization must be planted at some point. Some blueprints, some ideas must go forth. And this plane of existence, we must become conscious pilots. That means pilot your attention as a presence prior to the plane of existence projecting through your sense of personality, let's say. When human beings look at each other and see unknown minds, that's when there is the empty page on the designer's table to rebuild civilization. The option is either change what's here or to build something new. If the attention is beyond shape, then that means shape is not the definer, I think. So you see, it's like the eyes, it's like the seer of thought idea. And the seer of thought was like most people felt they were their thoughts. The seer of thought could see thoughts. He wasn't the thought. That means anything could happen and he would just observe the event. And as you observe the event, what happens? It's just like life happening. It's the progress of the realm. It's like the dawn of consciousness in a lifeless world, the dawn of meaning, the dawn of value. The center of gravity of our minds is how our body is the light of our inner realms. So it's a unique time. It's more like, you know what it is? It's more like a time where people are being pushed to their inner realms only to revalue their outer realms. I feel that there's so much, like the logos once in my writings kind of, how can I say, there was this sort of profound insight that it was as if like the logos told me behind every person's eyes, there is in some sense libraries. And it's up to the person to choose to share the library. And what does that mean? That means the journey towards studying whatever this mind that you're considering you have is, it leads to the depth of the perception of how reality is here. And the full resolution of it is, even as you climb Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as you go through the stages of survival, in some sense, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, guys, is like this concept from sociology, really, where Maslow was this guy and he's like, what do people need? And there was a sort of physiological survival, like shelter, food, water, handling the individual objective body. And then it was in some sense the need for having like a community, having safety, security, individuality, then being part of a community and whatnot, you know? And then it went on to much more deeper psychological needs, you know? Then it went on to some point here, let me find the exact thing. It eventually goes to the peak of self-actualization after the person has kind of reached a sort of legacy level of need. Oh, there we go. So there's the physiological needs, okay, air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing, reproduction. Then there's safety needs, personal security, employment, resources, health, property. Then there's love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, sense of connection. Then there's esteem, respect, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, freedom. I would say here legacy too. Legacy would go here. That means your future, pretty much. Most people are living for their future. And then there's self-actualization, desire to become the most that one can be. It's like, what a nice guy this Maslow. He's like, at the end of everything, after you got everything in this life, you need to actualize all of it. That means it's not just enough to get all these, you need to also, actualize the real self, So you see, it's moving the person towards self-actualization. This self-actualization is a collective experience of a collective rhythm. We got to pretty much build a society and a civilization, which is the accumulation of all societies, all behaviors occurring in society, that is just advanced. That means people are living, and it's like literally the next day you wake up, just go around looking at your world and wonder what can update, what hasn't updated yet. And you will be fascinated how many things you'll notice about life. Gandhi, he said there's more to life than increasing its speed. And if you're a roller coaster, designer, and you have to, it's your job, you'll be like, I don't know about that, Gandhi. You are speed with vision. Your vision is your speed. You know, it's kind of like studying Nordic, the psychology of Nordic myth, and kind of realizing when Thor commanded for his hammer to come to his hand, it would come instantly. That there's a level of relationship of attention to world and moment and form where the expression is instantaneous. So in some sense, the idea is kind of in your inner realms, get where you want to go, get that, remember that moment through feeling, and then feel on. You know how Aerosmith has a song, called "Dream On." It's like feel on. It's like, what am I feeling? It's like future. Feeling the future in the present. That's like, doesn't get more next level than that, guys. Guys, here's the thing. If you don't understand the system, even if it was a simulation, you could not see the exit. There is a level of awareness that it's more like a trust of the self before it moves. That means this is a strange thing, but I think I should share it probably. This relationship with the Tao of the moment that Lao Tzu spoke about, this relationship that Morihei Ueshiba, the founder of Aikido, he spoke about, the truth, the Tao being the witnessing, the soul, the movement of the soul of heaven and earth. That means earth has its soul and heaven has its soul. And in some sense, it's seeing the movements of their simultaneity. I remember I gave a couple of talks back. It's called, what was it called? The world is living its life through you, something like that. It's nothing to be alarmed. It's just to recognize that as a natural being, before you're a citizen of human ideology, you're a citizen of natural existence. So guys, if there's, I encourage anyone who's listening, if you're interested and in your mind there's a question, ask now because I'm falling asleep. It's 3 a.m. No, I'm joking. I'm still awake, but what is awakening really? Okay, guys. Brianna asks, "Who is Mr. Within, or Mr. With us give?" Mr. Within's gift. Um, Honestly, here's the thing. Before I started this channel, the name had come to me strangely, and suddenly it was in 2014 where I got a strange vision. Like literally, it was just like this instant of just knowing that in some sense I just need to do this project where I was like, okay, what if I just try this? So I decided to give 10,000 talks. I was just like, okay, let's see. you know, I was like, let's see. And it was so, the project was so, I started as a project, and it's a project for myself, just something. And I chose the name Mr. Within because I wanted to take people's attention to who they were. Because on some level, when you look at the mirror, you see a reflection of your body, but you don't see a reflection of your mind. That's pretty much it's left unknown, and we're kind of being pulled into in like a bit of a materialistic society where the inner realms they're being less valued. You know. So I thought of creating this online alias and, in some sense, being like, all right, no one in history has cared for these words to put them beside each other. So I'm like, all right, I'll be that guy, you know. So I was like, there we go. That's the night where I became in the digital realm, Mr. Within. And before that, I had this SoundCloud page where it was called Mr. Within's Dream, and I was like just sharing, like just kind of promoting the music of all these underground ambient musicians. You know what I mean? Like electronic musicians. But anyways, ideas evolve. That's the fascinating thing. It's like we're not just alive; we're growing with our world into really what we see next. And guys, I did have a profound moment in my life where I asked a close friend of mine this deep question. She claimed she was clairvoyant. And she looked at me and she said, all answers come from within. And of course, her stare was, it was like a different kind of stare, but, but I can tell you, like, the thing was, she told me all the answers come from within. Do you know what that means? That means whatever you hear is still an inner processing of your sensory perception. So, anyways, guys, yeah, that's the thing. That's the inspiration of the name, Mr. Within. Plus, I liked how it sounded because my mind plays with geometry often. So when I saw like the M and the W, my mind was thinking of like how I could draw an M and a W in like a unique way. Here, I'll share something which with the audience, which might be interesting. Um, I'm gonna be starting a channel soon, like a new channel. It's gonna be design oriented. Like I'm gonna share some. Uh, I don't know. For some reason, I felt like moving on to sharing techniques about art and whatnot. Um, Here, let me see. Alright, guys, so I'm using a new live streaming platform, so I don't know how smooth the picture is going to be seen by the audience, but this is what I drew. So this was like an inspiration of the name, Mr. Within. Yeah, there we go. So this new YouTube channel I'm gonna start, I'm gonna be sharing with people kind of like my approach to geometry and kind of how, just like if you could see writing to be a way you're kind of like a synchronization of the movement of the inner realms and coordinates to the outer realms, this you can say is geometrical writing. So I would consider this geometrical freestyle writing to some degree. It's like the same kind of state. You know, it's like a balance here. I'll show you another one. There we go. So guys, I don't know if you see the picture. People should see the second picture. I don't see it updated here. Okay, there we go. Yeah, it's here. So yeah, guys. So you see, this is I would say this is a relationship with geometry and an awareness to space. You know, and so hopefully in this new channel I'm gonna start, this is gonna be I'm pretty much gonna tell people how to do this. Anyways, guys, I'm super exhausted. I'm gonna end the talk, you know. But thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate the listeners, and check it out. You know, you can, anybody who wants to join School of Athens, people who join School of Athens, this is this kind of online community, just, you know, dedicated to this channel pretty much, and people can get free books there, but also, you know, I'm accessible there at any time. Anybody who joins that digital community, I'm like, the thing's connected to my phone. I can check my phone anytime if you have a sort of communication or whatever. So anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste. And one last thing. The march of the living unknown. When life moved towards light, consciousness realized novelty was its birthright, you know. Much blessings.